After what feels like forever, it finally looks like Spawn is truly making a comeback because Todd McFarlane's long-awaited reboot, now called King Spawn, is slowly but surely moving forward with Blumhouse. And for comic book fans, especially people who grew up loving darker anti-heroes, this is actually a pretty huge deal. Spawn has always been one of those characters with massive potential because he's not your typical superhero at all. He's violent, tragic, creepy, emotional, and way more complicated than a bunch of mainstream comic book movie characters people usually talk about. What makes this even crazier is the fact that this movie has basically been in development for decades. We're talking about a project Todd McFarlane first started teasing way back in the late 1990s. That alone shows how passionate he is about getting this character right, because even though Hollywood trends changed over and over again, McFarlane never really gave up on bringing Spawn back properly. For people who may not know much about the character, Spawn first appeared in Image Comics back in 1992. Created by Todd McFarlane, the character instantly became one of the most recognizable non-Marvel and non-DC comic heroes ever made. That's impressive because comic books outside the big two usually struggle to reach that same level of popularity. But Spawn was different because the design alone was unforgettable. The cape, the chains, the glowing green eyes, the dark supernatural vibe, it all stood out immediately. And the story itself was darker too. Al Simmons wasn't some clean-cut hero trying to save the world with a smile on his face. He was a murdered government assassin who got sent back to Earth as a Hellspawn after making a deal with dark forces. So right from the beginning, Spawn was built around horror, violence, revenge, and redemption. That's probably why fans connected with him so strongly, because he felt completely different from the usual superhero formula. Back in 1997, Spawn already got a live-action adaptation starring Michael J. White as Al Simmons. And honestly, while critics weren't exactly kind to that movie at the time, it slowly gained a cult following over the years. A bunch of fans still appreciate the atmosphere, the practical effects, and the ambition it had, even though the CGI definitely aged rough in certain scenes. But despite its flaws, that movie kept the Spawn name alive in pop culture. And at the same time, the animated HBO series became something even more respected because a lot of people consider it one of the greatest mature animated comic adaptations ever made. The show leaned fully into the horror side of Spawn and treated the material seriously instead of trying to make it overly commercial. That's one of the reasons fans still talk about it nearly 30 years later. And Keith David's performance as Spawn in the animated series remains legendary. His voice added this heavy emotional weight to Al Simmons that made the character feel intimidating and tragic at the same time. So when Keith David recently said he would absolutely return to voice Spawn again in a New York heartbeat, fans immediately got excited because people still love that version of the character so much. What's interesting is that the animated series almost came back years ago. Keith David even recorded material for a reboot attempt before the project eventually got cancelled. So there's clearly been interest in reviving Spawn for a long time. But now, with King Spawn finally moving ahead, it feels like the franchise might genuinely be entering a brand new era. One of the biggest reasons people are optimistic is because Blumhouse is involved. The studio built its reputation on smaller budget horror films that focus heavily on atmosphere and tension rather than giant CGI spectacle. And Spawn fits that style perfectly because this character works best when the story feels gritty, creepy, and grounded instead of becoming non-stop superhero chaos. Todd McFarlane himself has also been talking positively about the project lately. During San Diego Comic-Con, he clarified that the latest script draft was finally finished, although the title King Spawn might still change before release. But the important part is that real progress is happening. After decades of delays and uncertainty, hearing McFarlane openly discuss scripts, franchises, and production plans makes the movie feel more real than ever before. He also mentioned that the film will likely be rated R, which feels like the smartest possible choice. Spawn was never meant to be sanitized into a family-friendly superhero character because the comics are brutal, psychological, violent, and full of dark themes. Trying to water that down would completely miss the point of the character, so the fact that they're embracing the mature tone is a very good sign. Then there's Jamie Foxx stepping into the role of Al Simmons, which is another major reason fans are paying attention. Foxx is one of those actors who can bring intensity, charisma, and vulnerability all at once. Whether it's Django Unchained, Ray, or even his more recent action projects, he knows how to carry complicated characters emotionally. And Spawn absolutely needs that emotional depth, because beneath all the supernatural horror stuff, Al Simmons is still a broken man struggling with guilt, anger, and identity. What's also exciting is that McFarlane hinted at more major actors joining the cast eventually, so it sounds like they want this movie to feel genuinely big while still keeping that darker tone intact. Although details about villains like Violator are still under wraps, there's already this feeling that the project is finally building real momentum. The title itself is interesting too, because King Spawn isn't just a random name. In the comics, King Spawn became a separate storyline starting in 2021, and it focused on darker thriller-style storytelling compared to more traditional superhero comic structures. Instead of just fighting random villains every issue, the stories leaned harder into mystery, horror, and psychological tension. That could tell us a lot about the movie's direction, because it sounds like this reboot may avoid doing another straightforward origin story. Most audiences already know the basics of Spawn at this point, so jumping into a more experienced, battle-worn version of Al Simmons could actually make the movie feel fresher. And the timing for King Spawn might finally be perfect. Superhero audiences have started craving stories that feel different because after years of giant multiverse battles and endless CGI destruction, darker, grounded comic adaptations are standing out more again. Movies like Joker, Logan, and even shows like The Boys prove there's still a massive audience for mature comic book storytelling when it's handled seriously. Spawn fits naturally into that lane because the character was always darker than most mainstream superheroes anyway. He exists somewhere between horror and superhero fiction, which honestly gives King Spawn a chance to stand apart from almost everything else coming out right now. Another thing helping the movie is the fact that comic book fans already know Spawn as one of the coolest visual styles in comics history. If the movie nails the atmosphere, the costume, the cape effects, and the horror elements, it could genuinely become visually unforgettable. Spawn should feel intimidating, almost supernatural in the way he moves and appears on screen. And that wraps up today's video. If you want to stay in the loop with all the latest movie and series news, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give us a big thumbs up, because I'll be bringing you more updates on upcoming movies before they even drop. So keep an eye out for that, along with the latest on your other favorite shows and movies. Stay tuned, and I'll see you in the next one.